From disaster to done.
East Texas Restoration Report. From disaster to done.
So there is this very specific, I guess, deeply sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach when a bargain reveals its true nature.
Oh, yeah. We all know that feeling.
Right. I mean, think about the last time you hired someone for a job, or maybe you bought a critical piece of equipment, and you deliberately chose the absolute lowest price available. You looked at the spread of options, and you just went with that rock bottom number.
Exactly, because, well, it feels good at first.
It does. For a brief window, maybe a few days or even weeks, you felt like this surge of triumph, like you gamed the system, you kept capital in your pocket. But I really want you to focus on the moment that illusion shattered.
The inevitable wake-up call.
Yeah. The moment you heard like the unmistakable hiss of a pipe behind the drywall. Or maybe the moment the software crashed and just corrupted a week of client data. Or the second that cheap tool snapped in half and ruined the engine block you were working on.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is the worst.
It's this sheer overwhelming wave of regret when you realize the money you thought you saved is currently evaporating, and you are about to pay a premium to dig yourself out of a disaster of your own making.
It is a phenomenal psychological trap, honestly. The sting of that regret is universal, yet, the allure of the low number just remains almost impossible to resist.
Why is that, though?
Well, we routinely suspend our critical thinking, our understanding of market dynamics, and, even our basic common sense, all because the immediate gratification of upfront savings simply overwhelms our long-term risk assessment.
And we are dissecting that exact phenomenon today in this deep dive. We're looking at a brilliant, highly concentrated piece of writing called The Mirage of the Low Bid.
It's such a great source text.
It really is. Specifically, we're pulling apart episode 7 of this work, which is dedicated to the hidden cost of cheap work. It is essentially a roadmap of process failure.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to describe it.
So we're going to look at the anatomy of why a low bid structurally fails, right? The specific corners that get cut. Things the author identifies as incomplete drawing, poor materials, and a deliberate lack of oversight.
And how those skip steps basically incubate in the dirt until they force massive, expensive rework.
Exactly. So the overarching mission here is to understand the primary insight of this source, why cheap work is actually the most expensive path you can take.
Yeah, and the premise we are testing from this source is both simple and, deeply counterintuitive. The text functions almost like an autopsy report of failed projects.
An autopsy report, I like that.
Right, because it forces us to look past the initial invoice and examine the physics, the chemistry, and the economics of what actually happens when you starve a process of the necessary resources.
Well, let's start right at the psychological root of this, looking at the title of the piece itself, The Mirage of the Low Bid. Calling it a mirage is a very deliberate framing, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's crucial.
Because a mirage isn't just a random hallucination or, an optical illusion you see at a magic show. A mirage is a projection created by intense environmental conditions.
Yeah.
And more importantly, it preys on your desperation.
Yes, that's the key.
Like a person wandering in the desert sees an oasis because their brain is desperately screaming for water.
And that environmental pressure is the key to understanding the initial trap. When you are managing a budget, whether it's, say, a massive corporate infrastructure project or just a home renovation, the pressure to preserve capital is immense.
Right.
Your thirst, going back to your analogy, is the need to stay under budget. The low bid appears on your desk, and it looks exactly like salvation. It looks like an oasis. The number is perfectly aligned with your desired outcome.
But the defining characteristic of a mirage is that the closer you get to it, the faster it vanishes. You commit to the low bid, the work begins, and the savings just evaporate into thin air. I think a lot of people write this off as just bad luck or maybe a dishonest contractor, but it's deeper than that. There's an inverse relationship at play here.
There really is. The source argues that the lower the initial price tag drops below the market average, the higher the mathematical probability that the ultimate final cost will actually skyrocket.
It's wild to think about. It's like buying a $5 umbrella during a hurricane.
Oh, that's a great example.
You feel like a genius for about 10 seconds until it flips inside out, right? And then you're soaked, you're out $5, and you still need to go buy a real umbrella.
Exactly. We can map this directly to behavioral economics. Specifically, there's this concept of hyperbolic discounting.
Hyperbolic discounting. What is that exactly?
Yeah. Well, human beings are structurally wired to heavily favor immediate payoffs while heavily discounting future risks. When you look at a $10,000 bid and a $6,000 bid, your brain immediately registers that $4,000 difference as tangible, immediate wealth you get to keep today.
Oh, I see. It's money in the bank right now.
Right. The structural failures, the leaks, the code crashes, those are abstract hypothetical events that, might happen in the distant future. The brain simply cannot weigh the abstract future pain heavily enough to override the concrete present-day savings.
But let me throw a wrench into that assumption for a second. Because any smart consumer or project manager listening to this is going to wonder about market efficiency.
Sure.
If I get 3 bids and one is significantly lower, it's not always a scam, right? I mean, some companies have better supply chains, lower overhead, or maybe proprietary technology that makes them genuinely faster.
That's a very fair point. So how do we differentiate between an efficient bid and just the cheap work the text is warning us about? Shouldn't the free market reward the lowest price?
That is the exact vulnerability the cheap bid exploits. It's called information asymmetry.
Information asymmetry.
Yeah. In economics, this is the classic market for lemons scenario. You, the buyer, cannot easily see the internal operations of the bidder. Efficiency is a beautiful thing. It means a company has optimized a process to eliminate waste while preserving the integrity of the final product.
Right. Efficiency is good.
But cheap work, as strictly defined by our source, is not the elimination of waste. It is the elimination of necessary load-bearing steps. Efficiency finds a shorter, safer route. Cheap work just drives the car off the cliff because it's technically a faster way to the bottom.
Oh, wow. That is a stark difference. So the mirage relies on the buyer, assuming both bids are utilizing the same fundamental process, when in reality, the low bidder has secretly rewritten the rules of physics and chemistry to hit that number.
Exactly. They are playing a completely different, much more dangerous game. Which leads us directly into the physical execution of the work. If we accept the bid, the illusion ends, and the reality of the construction or the coding or the manufacturing actually begins.
And this is where things start to physically break down.
Right. The text outlines 3 key concepts that act as the structural pillars of this failure. It calls them the triangle of failure. The 3 pillars are incomplete drying, poor materials, and a lack of oversight. Let's dig into the first one. Incomplete drying.
Yeah, so incomplete drawing is perhaps the most profound concept in the text because it operates on both a literal and a systemic level.
How so?
On a literal level, any trade professional understands that time is a physical ingredient in construction and manufacturing. Concrete requires a 28-day curing process to reach its design compressive strength.
Right, you can't just skip that.
Primer must flash off and release its solvents before the top coat is applied. You cannot negotiate with chemistry.
You can't just mandate that concrete cures in 48 hours because your budget is tight.
Exactly. The chemical reaction requires latency. But when a project is operating under the razor-thin margins of a low bid, time is the very first resource that gets stolen.
Because time is money.
Precisely. The contractor cannot afford to pay a crew to sit and wait. The margin demands absolute, relentless forward momentum. So they pour the foundation, and long before the moisture has escaped, they start framing the walls. They seal the moisture inside.
And to the client, it looks fine, right? The surface looks solid to the naked eye. The concrete feels hard to the touch.
It does, but the structural integrity hasn't formulated, so incomplete drawing really represents the theft of time.
The theft of time. That's a great way to put it. And if we pull that out of the physical trades and apply it to a corporate or knowledge work setting, the theft of time looks like, I don't know, a software developer skipping the quality assurance testing phase to hit a launch deadline.
Oh, absolutely. That's a perfect parallel.
Or a manager skipping the 3-week onboarding process for a new hire and just throwing them onto the production floor on day 2.
Yes. The mechanism is identical. You are bypassing the latency period required for stability. You are launching a product on green concrete. The software looks like it works on the developer's machine. The new hire looks like they are busy at their desk. The paint looks dry.
Right. The illusion of completion is incredibly convincing on day 1.
It is. But the internal structure is fundamentally compromised because the time required for stabilization was stolen to artificially lower the cost.
And if time is the first thing stolen, the physical components are the second. The text moves from incomplete drying to poor materials. This is the theft of quality.
Yeah, that's the next logical step in the downward spiral.
If the bidder can't squeeze enough margin out of rushing the timeline, They have to extract the profit from the physical matter of the project itself.
We see this constantly in supply chain substitutions. A specification might call for a certain grade of steel or a specific thickness of copper piping or enterprise-grade server hardware. The low bidder substitutes those requirements with visually identical but materially deficient alternatives. They use lower gauge wiring, they use synthetic composites that degrade under UV light, they use consumer-grade hard drives in a server farm.
The terrifying part is the visual similarity. If I look at two PVC pipes, or two lines of code, or two identical legal contracts, where one is missing a crucial indemnity clause, I cannot tell the difference. The poor materials are completely disguised.
That is where the concept of yield strength and mean time between failures comes into play. The cheap material and the premium material perform identically on the day of installation.
So when you turn the water on, the cheap pipe holds the pressure.
Exactly. The mirage is sustained. But the cheap pipe lacks the molecular density to withstand the microscopic expansions and contractions of thermal cycling over 2 years. The cheap alloy in the plumbing fitting is susceptible to galvanic corrosion, where dissimilar metals react to each other and slowly rust from the inside out.
So you are basically buying a component that is fundamentally exhausted before it even begins its lifespan.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the third pillar in this triangle of failure: lack of oversight. Because if a crew is skipping curing times and installing substandard corrosive materials, well, somebody should be noticing that, right?
You would think so.
I mean, there should be an inspector, a foreman, a senior developer reviewing the pull request. You can't easily see that a layer of primer didn't dry completely or that the internal materials are substandard, especially if no one is overseeing it. Are these concepts essentially a recipe for hiding flaws?
They are, and lack of oversight is the crucial enabler here. Without oversight, the worker is free to use poor materials and allow incomplete drying without immediate consequence. Because oversight is an overhead cost. It does not produce a tangible, billable artifact.
Right. A quality assurance manager does not lay bricks or write code.
No, they verify the integrity of those who do. When a bid is slashed to the absolute bone, oversight is always the first casualty. The math simply does not allow for a non-producing salary on the job site.
So the low bid structurally mandates the removal of the very people whose job it is to catch the incomplete drying and the poor materials.
Exactly. It's a compounding failure. It's not just that corners are being cut. It's that the system has been deliberately blinded so no one can see the corners being cut.
You've created a dark space where the normalization of deviance thrives. The worker on the ground knows the concrete isn't cured, and they know the pipe fitting is cheap. But without a foreman holding them accountable to the specification, the path of least resistance is just to bury the mistake behind the drywall and move on to the next task.
And that lack of oversight acts as the catalyst that allows the theft of time and the theft of quality to occur with absolute impunity. It diffuses responsibility.
How so?
Well, the worker assumes the project manager knows about the cheap materials, the project manager assumes the client just wants it done quickly, and the client assumes the building codes or industry standards will magically protect them. Everyone looks the other way, and the mirage holds together just long enough for the final invoice to be paid.
Wow. That transition from the final invoice being paid to the ultimate collapse is fascinating. The source text lays out a very clear chronological timeline, moving from these initial failures into 3 core themes: shortcuts, long-term damage, and rework.
Right. It maps the downward spiral perfectly.
We start with the shortcuts. That's the active, deliberate decisions we just talked about. Rushing the paint, swapping the materials, firing the inspector. The shortcut is the inception point.
And importantly, shortcuts rarely cause immediate catastrophic failure. Complex systems have a degree of tolerance built into them. When a structural shortcut is taken, the system absorbs the stress and incubates it.
Okay.
This introduces the second core theme, long-term damage. This is the latent phase where the physics and chemistry slowly assert their dominance over the project's timeline.
The long-term damage phase is silent. I look at this almost exactly like a physical ailment, like ignoring a minor toothache instead of getting a filling.
Oh, that's a really good analogy.
Right. The shortcut is ignoring the pain to save a trip to the dentist. The long-term damage is the decay silently spreading to the root while you go about your life.
Yeah.
And the rework is the eventual, incredibly painful and expensive root canal.
Yes. Or, looking at software technical debt is another perfect modern analogy for this. A startup gets a low-bid development team to build their app. The developers take massive shortcuts to hit the aggressive budget.
They don't build a scalable database architecture. They just hard-code workarounds to make the interface look pretty for the investors.
Exactly. It's the incomplete drawing of the tech world.
Yes, for a year, everything is fantastic. The Mirage is beautiful. But then the company scales. They get 100,000 new users. That silent shortcut, that technical debt, suddenly compounds.
The database requests bottleneck. The servers overheat.
Customer data starts getting corrupted and crossed. The long-term damage isn't just that the code is bad, it's that the bad code is now woven into the entire operational fabric of a massive moving company. The foundation is rotting while the skyscraper is fully occupied.
Which forces the system into the final, inevitable stage of the spiral. Rework. And rework is the most misunderstood concept in project management.
Why do you say that?
Well, people tend to think of rework as simply getting a do-over, just paying a second time to get the thing you originally wanted. But the mathematics of rework are far more brutal than that.
Break down that math for us. Why is rework so much more punitive than just paying twice?
Because of the long-term damage that occurred during the latency period, let's use your software example or maybe a physical construction example like a leaking roof. When you are forced into rework, you must first pay the original sunken cost of the cheap bid. That money is gone.
Right.
Second, you must pay the extensive labor cost of demolition. You have to carefully surgically extract the corrupted database or rip out the rotting drywall and moldy insulation caused by the cheap roof.
Wait, really? You were literally paying people to destroy your own property.
Precisely. You have to pay for the teardown. Third, you must pay for the remediation of the collateral damage. The cheap roof didn't just fail, it ruined the hardwood floors beneath it. The bad code didn't just crash, it corrupted the billing cycle. So you are repairing peripheral systems that had nothing to do with the original project.
Oh man, that adds up fast.
It does. And finally, fourth, you must pay the premium expedited rate for the competent professionals to come in and properly install the correct materials with the correct drying times while you are in a state of absolute emergency.
The multiplier is staggering when you lay it out like that. You aren't paying 100% of a normal bid. You're paying the original 70% low bid, plus, say, a 40% demolition tax, plus a 50% collateral damage tax, plus the 120% emergency premium to the new contractor. You've spent 280% of what it would have cost to just hire the premium competent firm on day one.
This is the mathematical proof of the source's primary thesis. The low bid is basically a predatory financial instrument. You are taking out a high-interest loan against the structural integrity of your own project.
Wow.
You get the cash up front, but the interest compounds in the dark, in the form of material degradation, until a systemic failure forces a margin call.
And that reality is perfectly encapsulated in the final section of our source text, which offers two brilliant axiomatic quotes, the authority of hindsight, as they put it. The first quote is just, "Shortcuts show up later." It's incredibly brief, but the weight of the entire phenomenon hangs on that word later.
Later is the psychological blind spot that makes the entire low-bid industry possible. Think about it. If a contractor used substandard cement and the driveway cracked into dust the moment they drove their truck off it, the feedback loop would be instantaneous.
The market would immediately self-correct and reject that contractor. There would be no mirage because the failure would be immediate.
Exactly. But cheap work possesses a latency period. It looks pristine at the moment of the handover. The later is what allows the contractor to cash the check and disappear. It allows the software vendor to lock you into a multi-year contract before the bugs actually manifest.
Right?
The phrase "shortcuts show up later" is almost a fundamental law of physics. The stress of the shortcut does not disappear, it is merely deferred. It transfers from the contractor's profit margin directly into the material fatigue of the structure. It is an inescapable debt.
Which brings the hammer down on the final summarizing quote of the text. You pay for it twice. We just went through the brutal financial multiplier of demolition and remediation. But, when the text says you pay for it twice, is it just about money? Or are we paying twice in stress, time, and delayed use of whatever was being built or fixed?
It's definitely all of the above. The financial penalty is almost always the easiest part to swallow because a business can absorb a capital loss. What you cannot easily absorb is the absolute destruction of your operational bandwidth and your peace of mind.
Because when the long-term damage manifests, it is never convenient, is it?
Never. The cheap server crashes on Black Friday. The substandard plumbing bursts while you are on a 2-week vacation.
You pay in friction. You pay in downtime.
The downtime is catastrophic. If a restaurant's cheap walk-in freezer fails, they don't just pay for a new compressor. They lose $10,000 in spoiled inventory. They lose a weekend of revenue because they cannot open. They suffer the reputational damage of turning away loyal customers.
That's a huge hidden cost.
And even beyond the business metrics, there is the cognitive load. The sheer, overwhelming stress of managing a crisis you thought you had already paid to solve.
It just drains your psychological reserves. You thought you bought a solution, an upgrade, a fix. Instead, you bought a dormant parasite. And when it finally wakes up, it demands your money, your time, your focus, and your sanity. You are paying twice because the first time you paid for an illusion, and the second time you are paying a ransom to get your life back.
It is the ultimate validation of the central premise. Sheep work isn't an alternative method of production, it is an active sabotage of the future. When you strip away the time, the quality, and the oversight, you are not saving money. You are simply deferring a much larger, much more painful expense.
It fundamentally changes how you look at the concept of a bargain. This short text manages to diagnose the root cause of billions of dollars in wasted capital and, honestly, immeasurable human frustration.
It's incredibly powerful when you break it down.
So let's trace the arc of what we've unpacked today. We began by looking at the trap of the mirage. We explored how the intense pressure to save resources triggers our hyperbolic discounting, blinding us to the reality that a price tag severely below market value is relying on hidden information asymmetry to survive.
We then pulled the curtain back on the physical execution, detailing the triangle of failure. We looked at the chemistry of incomplete drying, the theft of time. We examined the molecular reality of poor materials, the theft of quality. And we saw how the systemic removal of oversight, the theft of accountability, creates the necessary dark space for those shortcuts to be buried out of sight.
From there, we followed that hidden timeline as the shortcuts incubated into latent, long-term structural damage. Whether it's galvanic corrosion inside a wall or technical debt inside a code base, the failure silently spreads until it reaches a critical mass.
And when it breaks, it forces the catastrophic penalty of rework, demanding we pay to demolish our own mistakes, remediate the collateral damage, and finance the emergency replacement.
Concluding with the absolute certainty that while the mirage holds on day one, the shortcuts show up later, guaranteeing that the debt will be called in and ensuring that through financial loss, operational downtime, and psychological stress, you will inevitably pay for it twice.
It really is a devastatingly clear mechanism once you see the whole picture.
It is. But, I don't want to leave this purely in the realm of contractors and corporate software. The physics of this text apply to human behavior just as accurately as they apply to concrete and code.
Oh, absolutely. It's a universal principle.
We've spent this entire deep dive analyzing external projects, looking at why cheap work structurally fails and costs more in the end. But knowing this undeniable compounding cycle of shortcuts, long-term damage, and rework, it requires a moment of internal audit.
It forces us to look inward.
Exactly. I want you, the listener, to look at the architecture of your own life right now. Look at your relationships, your physical health, your skill development, your career trajectory. Where, right in this moment, are you actively accepting incomplete drying?
That's a profound question to ask yourself.
Where are you rushing the foundation of a relationship or skipping the necessary, tedious reps of learning a new skill because you want the immediate gratification of feeling finished? Where are you employing a deliberate lack of oversight on your own habits, refusing to measure your health or track your finances because the cheap comfort of ignorance feels better than the expensive overhead of discipline?
It's so much easier to just take the low bid in our personal lives, too.
It is. The low bid is always available to you. It's the path of least resistance. But knowing the sheer mathematical brutality of how this cycle ends, the real question you have to ask yourself is this. When those personal shortcuts finally finish incubating, and they inevitably show up later to demand their toll, are you truly prepared for what it's going to cost to pay for it twice?